Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome, world changers. And thank you, Hannah, for that beautiful, beautiful music. That was amazing, as always. By the way, it's only a matter of days now. Hannah will have her album released another 5 days, or less than 5 days now. This will be Monday, August 21st, 2023. She will have an album release. So when that is available, when I get the links, I will put that in the description. Won't be tonight, but maybe in the next few days. We'll see how it goes. Regardless, I hope to get the links in the description on Monday. That'll be Monday, August 21st. So welcome, everyone. Blessings multiplied to you. As always, I pray that everything that we share here would be a great blessing to you. Increase your knowledge of the scriptures, your knowledge of the things of heaven, your relationship with God, and your knowledge of the truth. Amen, amen, amen. So, let's see what we have here in the live chat just before we get into the thick of it here. Calamentos says, Shalom to all. Shalom, Calamentos. Welcome. Thomas says, Shalom and blessings. Shalom, blessings multiplied to you. Seek the Lord says, Shalom. Shalom, seek the Lord. Blessings. Billy says, Shalom over there on TikTok. Shalom, Billy. Welcome and blessings multiplied to you. Ken says, Shalom, everyone. Shalom, Ken. Blessings. Good to see you. All right. So I got a couple comments as usual that I have clipped, and the first one's going to be talking about what is figurative speech, what isn't. Well, I'm not going to get into all the details, but someone asked a question about that. Another question about the Bible. If the Bible has errors in it, then should we throw the whole Bible out, or should we keep the whole, that kind of thing? We're going to get into that in just a little bit too. Now, if I have left a comment on your comment, and if I have said that I will read and respond to your comment tonight, I will do that in just a moment. But just before we get into that, I will be reading and responding to those comments, as well as getting into our critical thinking tip, as we always do. We're going to be talking a little bit more about intellectual humility. I think it's very important. And then, Lord willing, Hannah will come back and bless us with some more music. And Lord willing, we'll get into Josephus a little bit later. Josephus. Okay, just before we get into the thick of it, as always, share the live stream. If you guys know of anybody that would be interested in listening, share the live stream. Let's get your friends, family members, co-workers, what have you, even your enemies, as the Tower Time would say every once in a while, on board, listening at least. And if you have any questions, we'll just drop that in the live chat and we'll get to those. By the way, this is the best time right now to enter your questions. If you have any questions, drop those questions in the live chat right now is the best time. And we'll get to those intermittently as the evening progresses here. Voice of One over on TikTok. Blessings. Welcome. Good to see you. All right. So, a little bit of background behind this comment. I posted some short videos and TikToks on figures of speech recently. And somebody asked me, it was somebody by the name of Tom Cleary, asked me, how do you know what is a figure of speech and what isn't a figure of speech? And so I referred him to my blog. My blog has an article on it called Figurative Language in the Bible. So my blog is christopherenoch.org, and I talk about reasons why some of the authors of the Bible wrote in figurative language, spoke about it in the Bible, the types of figures of speech, okay, and how to identify figure of speech in the Bible. So I got a whole article here. I'm not going to get into this right now, but then I list some of the figures of speech, born again, and how serious some of these figures of speech can be. You can get into some serious error if you take something literally when it's really just a figure of speech. And so I list a whole lot of examples of figures of speech, like Isaiah 40, verse 6, the voice says, cry out. And he said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and the loveliness is like the flower of the field. So all flesh is grass, especially that particular thing there. Is that literal? Is all flesh grass? You know, do I look like a golf course? What's going on here? Of course, this is a figure of speech. It's talking about how basically what this means. And I've had somebody ask me this. Well, if it's not a figure of speech, tell us what it means. Well, if you read the context of it, it's talking about how grass is so temporal. Today it's here, tomorrow it's gone. Grass, it's kind of like, who really, what do you call it? Who really, what's the word I'm thinking of right now? Accounts for every blade of grass. Okay, grass comes and grass goes, and you don't even know it. It just comes and goes like just so fast. The grass that you see, in a week from now is maybe not the grass that you had, this week. It's here today, gone tomorrow, so to speak. Figure of speech. So when it says all flesh is grass, it means it's a metaphor. It means that all flesh, meaning everything earthly, material things, money, if you will, material things, is all very temporary. It's here and gone before you even realize it. That's what it means. That's what it's talking about. So yeah, all flesh is grass, a figure of speech. Another one from Job. Job is full of figures of speech, by the way, but here's a good one. From whose womb comes the ice and the frost of heaven? Who gives it birth? Like, if you take this literally, you believe that ice is actually something that somebody gives birth to? Like, that's how we get ice and frost? I mean, somebody somehow sneaks out in the night and gives birth to frost on your lawn? I mean, is it literal? And so following the guidelines that I have outlined in this article, we can figure out what is a figure of speech and what isn't a figure of speech. The Bible is full of figures of speech. E.W. Bullinger counted hundreds and hundreds, several hundred. Even he says in his book his book is called Figures of Speech Used in the Bible. Even he said the figures of speech that I address in this book. He had like, how many pages did that book have? Like nearly 1,000 or more. I forget exactly. It was a big book, and he said that he only covered just basically the tip of the iceberg of the figures of speech in the Bible. The Bible's full of figures of speech. Another one, and again, Job, have you entered the treasury of snow, or have you seen the treasury of hail? Like, you think this is literal? Do you think that there's an actual building in the sky that, maybe the forklifts, maybe it's like Walmart, and the forklifts go and take and just dump snow on the earth. You think it's literal? Of course it's not literal. We know how snow is formed. We know how hail is formed. You can fly above the clouds. You see this into your hand. Another thing is, so there's so many different things. Figures of speech. Pillars. Song of Solomon speaks of Solomon, says his legs are pillars. His legs are pillars. Galatians, Peter, James, and John seem to be pillars, okay? And then not to be moved. Lots of figures of speech here saying that we, as righteous people who are following the ways of the Lord, are not to be moved. We're not moved. Of course, that's not literal. It doesn't mean that that you literally turn into a statue or like a pillar of salt, like Lot's wife. No, it means that you are not moved in a figurative sense. Like you're strong, mentally, emotionally, you're strong. You're able to handle a lot of things. You're not easily shaken. Figures of speech. So anyways, I directed Tom Cleary to this website, my blog and in this article. And so this is what I said. I said, I have a detailed article on my website, ChristopherEnoch.org, called Figurative Language in the Bible. Your answer can be found there. So the question again was, how do you know what is a figure of speech and what isn't? So Tom says, have you had that research confirmed by the church? Wait a second, Tom. There are 45. They say there are 45,000 denominations. Which one are you saying is the perfect denomination? Which one do I need to go and ask if it's true that Solomon's legs were not pillars? Which one? Which you want me to go talk to the Pope about it? Like, this is an appeal to authority, the appeal to authority fallacy. I don't need the Pope or any pastor, corrupt pastor, confirming the fact that when it says who gives birth to the ice, it's actually not speaking about literal birth. I don't need a pastor or a church leader in any denomination to tell me that the frost that falls on the snow is figuratively born by somebody. I don't have to have anybody tell me, oh, I need. Could you confirm this, please? I wonder if ice, you put ice or water in a freezer and it turns to ice. Perhaps somebody just pops out of the woodwork and gives birth to the ice there. Do I really need a church leader to confirm that it's a figure of speech? No. You don't need. Little children would have a little bit more knowledge than that. I don't need a church leader to do that. No. Or it says, is that based upon my own interpretation? Again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand, that ice is not born. To understand that this is not grass. It doesn't take much to understand that. I don't need a church leader to tell me that. Thank you very much, Tom Cleary. Some things you don't need a church leader to tell you, and then some things you don't. I don't see any evidence that Solomon actually had pillars for legs. But again, this is a figure of speech. Pillars of Solomon's legs were pillars. The Peter, James, and John being pillars. Pillars holding up the foundations of the earth. This kind of, y'all know this is figures of speech. Okay, another comment on a video. This is a video that always seems to get a lot of attention, especially on YouTube. Most Christians have no idea how to prove Paul. You should never use Paul's words to legitimize Paul. And this is just basic knowledge here. Somebody might say, well, David Koresh from Waco, Texas was the Messiah. You would ask him, how do you know David Koresh was the Messiah? Well, because he claimed he was the Messiah. Well, yeah, of course, every false prophet is going to claim to be a true prophet. Every false Messiah is going to claim to be a true Messiah. You need a whole lot more than just out of the horse's mouth. You need to have third-party, preferably unbiased sources to either confirm or deny that. Acts chapter 17, Paul went to Berea to speak to the men of Berea. And it says that the men of Berea tested everything that Paul said. They searched the scriptures daily to see whether or not what Paul said was true. Now, the scriptures did not include anything from the New Testament. It was all, quote-unquote, Old Testament that they used. So they tested Paul. And that's basically all I'm saying here in this video. Just test. That's it. Be like a Berean. The Bereans were never rebuked. They were never condemned for what they did. In fact, they were praised. It says in the scriptures that they were honorable. They were noble men. So on that video, again, this is like, to me, it's just something that's just common knowledge, or at least it should be common knowledge, Well, how do you know Johnny's telling the truth? Well, because he said he's telling the truth. Well, yeah, he's going to tell you he's telling the truth. He's not going to say, I'm lying to you, believe me, please. I am lying to you, believe me. No, he's not going to say that. He's going to say it's the truth. Okay? Everybody thinks that they're right, including Paul. So you can't just go by Paul's letters. So, Caddy, I believe this is Caddy Meowstick. Caddy Meowstick says, we shouldn't believe the Bible then. This is a fallacy. No, you don't. It's not. This is the genetic fallacy. It's like, well, if there's something wrong in one point, then everything has to be wrong. No, of course not. Here's the question. Who do you know of that has always told the truth, never ever saying anything that's not true? I don't think there's anybody. And except babies, perhaps. I don't think there's anybody. Does that mean that you should not believe anything from anybody? No, of course not. Even the greatest of all liars has some truth in it. Even the greatest of all liars will tell some truth. Okay, so let's not fall for the genetic fallacy, Caddy. Let's not do that. I say this very often. I say the Bible is something that should be read and studied. We do this all the time. I've been doing this for years. In fact, live streaming. I've been live streaming it for almost 2 years now, almost every day. And before that, I was posting videos quite regularly. We read through the entire Bible, every single word. Caddy, I'm wondering what you have for content on your YouTube. Just wondering. I haven't checked, but we have read through every single word of the Bible. Every word of almost every Bible you can imagine. I mean, we read through the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha and some of the early church fathers and all kinds of stuff. Right now we're reading through Josephus, okay? So I believe in studying the Bible. Yes, but I know that the Bible is not accurate in everything that it says. There are thousands of different manuscripts. I say manuscripts that are different. Differences. They say that there are hundreds of thousands of variants within these manuscripts. In other words, it's all over the place. There are lots of errors. Definitely lots of errors. If you want me to show you, Caddy, please let me know in the comment section or let me know in the live chat. I'll show you some clear errors. Very, very clear errors. But does that mean that it's all wrong? Of course not. That's just being stupid. You know, I liken it to the story of the Titanic. When the Titanic sank, you know, there were hundreds of people that were saved, the survivors. Amongst the survivors, eyewitnesses, they contradicted each other on almost every point. Almost every point except for the fact that the Titanic sank. It's like they argued about whether or not it broke in half. One person said it did, one person said it didn't, and they both claimed to be eyewitnesses. One person said that Captain Smith took his own life. Another one said no, he jumped off the side. I saw him just before the ship went down. Another one said no, he stayed in the bridge, and he never left, and he went down with the ship. Eyewitnesses contradicting each other all the time. That's normal. That's human. It actually makes it all the more believable because humans are humans. People don't remember things as well as they believe that they do. People don't remember things as good as they would like to or believe that they do. We're fallible. Okay? Everybody is. But does that mean that there's no truth at all in any of us? Of course not. Of course not. There's lots of truth. Lots of truth. Look at a court trial. You got witnesses that take the stand. If these witnesses, you know, are verbatim, you know, each witness is like the same story verbatim, definitely there's going to be like, well, man, there's a big red flag here. Just throw out their testimony because it seems like it's just all scripted or conspiracy there, conspired. What makes it more believable is that the witnesses contradict each other, at least in the minor points. They contradict each other. Dead Sea Scrolls, welcome Onia, says Lot's wife actually was a pillar. I didn't say she was, or I didn't say she wasn't. Uh, Dead Sea Scrolls, this is Onia, saying, who do I know who always speaks the truth? Myself, of course. Yeah, this is it. This is it. That's the thing. That's basically the gist of the whole thing. Is that everybody claims to have the full truth, but we have to be mindful of that. Anyway, Caddy says we shouldn't believe the Bible. Then no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I think that the Bible has a lot of truth in it, and I'm assuming you have no knowledge in history, right? What's this now? Ad hominem fallacy. You're going to attack my. You're going to attack my knowledge of history. Caddy, I would love to have you come on as a live guest. If you're listening, I'd love to have you come on as a live guest. I've got lots of questions for you. I got lots of questions for you about this comment and how, with many verses, you can see the Gospels borrowed from his epistles. Well, I think that you are correct in a certain sense. I think that some of the Gospels, if not all the Gospels, have at least some influence from Paul. But that doesn't mean that they believe that every single word that Paul says is ipso facto truth, and God, it doesn't mean that. Again, there's another fallacy. And then Caddy goes on to say, I mean, the Gospels were written decades after his epistles. Yes, I do understand that. And many of the early church fathers quoted his epistles as authoritative. So, many of the early church fathers contradicted themselves on many issues. I mean, so you're appealing to the authority of the early church fathers as if they have perfect knowledge and everything they say is true, but yet they contradict each other. I'd like to ask you lots of questions about this, Caddy. I'd like to ask a lot of questions about your logic here. Furthermore, some of the early church fathers that you're referring to have said some horrific things, very anti-Semitic things, and things that I think is very, very bad, to be honest with you. So what's your point, Caddy? You think that the early church fathers are perfect in what they say, so therefore if they say that Paul is authoritative, which they don't, I mean, yeah, there are many of the early church fathers that hold Paul in a high esteem. The question is, how authoritative is Paul? That's the question in their minds. But then again, what does it matter what any given church father believes? The question is, what is the truth? It always comes down to what is the truth. What's the truth? That's it. Is Paul perfect in everything he says? Or is he just a man? Does he have some truth? I think that he says a few. I got some favorite verses of Paul myself. I quote them quite often, actually. But there are other things of Paul that are questionable, to say the least. So that's my take on it, Caddy. Thank you for your comment. Child of One True King. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Blessings, blessings. All right. Yeah. Just before we get into, I want to get into talking about about intellectual humility here. This is what we've been talking about recently in regards to critical thinking. I usually spend a good little bit of a segment talking about critical thinking, so I will be talking about intellectual humility. Before that, if you haven't already, please leave a like, please subscribe and follow. Yeah, you don't have to believe everything we're talking about here. It's just something that I think it's a place of fellowship, a place to commune about these different ideas, a place to let your voice be heard, or questions, at least to submit some questions and get some answers perhaps, or at least provoke other people to think. And this is what I think is really, really good. We need to provoke people to think for themselves. Okay. Just give me a second, guys. Just give me a second. I'll be right back. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you for your patience. Appreciate that. Okay. I am going to read an article from a website called wellandgood.com. Wellandgood.com. Okay, so this is an article about intellectual humility. I think it's very, very important for every student of Scripture to practice this virtue, intellectual humility. And I just see Onia's comment here. If the Bible says all flesh is grass, I believe it. Yeah, that's great, Onia. Oh, by the way, we're going to have this grass, Onia grass. We're going to have Onia grass with us, Lord willing, on this Saturday. This Saturday at around 2 p.m. Shortly after 2 p.m. Yeah. So, Onia, you can show off your grass, your turf. Okay. All right. Well and good. Article about intellectual humility. Do you have intellectual humility? Here's why being open to being wrong can be a superpower. A great strategy for effectively communicating with people who may have different points of view than your own is to have an open mind and to be willing to listen. But depending on who you are, the issue at hand, and how passionate you feel about it, you may not be willing to budge in your perspective or even consider differing thoughts. But folks who are open to what others may have to say are likely to have more intellectual humility, which can be beneficial for relationships. Amen. Intellectual humility is the recognition that what you believe to be true may be wrong. We always talk about this, I don't think that anybody can really I don't think it's possible to really be 100% certain about anything unless you enter into Dunning-Kruger zone. And there are a lot of people that are, up on Mount Stupid there in Dunning-Kruger, top left. They think they know for sure, 100% certain. But here's the thing: there are always things that you don't think about that could make a difference in the way you believe. There's always things that you don't think about, or maybe perhaps you don't want to think about. There can be many different factors and pieces, and there can be many different pieces of evidence that can be in the mix, but you either A, don't know about it, or B, don't want to know about it, or don't want to believe it. And this can make all the difference. So we need to always come to the table, and I always say this with at least a little bit of, hey, you know what, I might be wrong. I could be wrong. But this is what I believe, This is what I believe, but this is the evidence of what I think, why I believe it, but I could be wrong. Yes, it says, but folks who are open to what others may say are likely to have more intellectual humility which can be beneficial for relationships. Intellectual humility is, quote, the recognition that what you believe to be true may be wrong, says social and personality psychologist Mark Leary. Mark Leary. Interesting. Onia says, grassroots movement. I have more intellectual humility than anyone I know. Yeah, there you go. There is the best way. Yeah, just I have 100%. I'm saturated with intellectual humility. The Bronze Serpent. Welcome, brother. Blessings. All right. Onia says we can't be 100% certain about historical claims, but we can be 100% certain about philosophical ideas. Well, that sounds very, very philosophical there, Onia. Thank you for your comment. Mark Leary. Leary. I think about this comment that we just read, I said Cleary, but it could be Cleary, or it could be Tom C. Leary. Right? So we got a couple Learys going on here. In a series of studies published in 2017 focused on measuring intellectual humility, Dr. Leary, with other researchers, found intellectually humble people to be open minded, curious, and less conceited about their beliefs, among other findings. We see this word a lot, don't we? Curious. Curious. But if you're concerned that holding this virtue may put you at risk of subscribing to beliefs that are antithetical to your own, worry not. Intellectual humility doesn't require you to be quick to abandon your convictions in favor of those of whomever has your ear. Rather, it's about acknowledging that your beliefs, however valid and solid they may feel to you, could be fallible. Isn't that amazing? Love it. In fact, that aforementioned research also found that people with intellectual humility are actually more discerning than others at parsing evidence that best backs up beliefs. So how can you identify someone who is intellectually humble? And if someone isn't, is it a trait that can be worked on? Read on and find out. It sounds very interesting. We will read on here in just a second. Historical claims includes any and all claims about what the Bible means or says Onia. How to identify someone with intellectual humility? We already know the answer, right? I mean, Onia said, going on with the same logic I was talking about earlier, the faulty logic, that if someone claims to be 100% true, then that must mean they're 100% true, right? So Onia said he's got more intellectual humility than anyone he knows. We should actually just put Onia's picture here under this subtitle, How to Identify Someone with Intellectual Humility. So you can ideally surround yourself with them. The telltale sign that someone has intellectual humility, this article says, is a demonstrated willingness to listen and consider different opinions, no matter whether they accept that information or not. Entertaining such ideas reflects valuing other people's thoughts, which can be an important trait in a peer. You see? Yeah, I mean, as believers, as Christians or Bible students or believers in God, I think we should do as much as possible to to fall into this category, because I do think it is an issue of pride and arrogance where people, they don't want to hear opposing views. Now I know that there are trolls and there are people out there that they're just being idiots, but people that are honest, that honestly have opposing views, and they have reasons to believe that, I think that it's worth I think it's worth listening to, worth considering. Onia says, great idea. I think that's talking about putting his picture in the in this article here. Well, it's a great idea. Yes. All right. As Dr. Leary noted in November 2021 article about intellectual humility published in Greater Mood magazine, quote, people who recognize that their beliefs are fallible take other people's perspectives more seriously and recognize the value of divergent opinions, unquote. Ultimately, people with intellectual humility pursue communication with others of different views out of desire to know the truth and to be accurate, not to confirm that they are in fact correct. These people value ongoing intellectual growth, so they engage with others to strengthen or refine their beliefs by way of respectfully collecting new information. This makes communicating with people who have different viewpoints more likely to be a fulfilling exchange than a tense debate, which is likely to ensue more often when no party involved has intellectual humility. Says here's a quote, intellectually humble people are more attentive, they're better listeners, unquote, Mark Leary. But while having intellectual humility yourself is great, it doesn't necessarily mean that people with whom you converse also will. You can't control everything. Even so, simply having it yourself does change how you deal with people who disagree with you, Dr. Leary says, adding that people who are intellectually humble are often astute listeners and less likely to be dismissive of others no matter what the other people believe. You see? Yeah. That's it. That's it. So yeah, Onia, unfortunately, not everybody has all the intellectual humility that you have. I understand. You must forgive us. You must forgive us, in all of your grace, overlook our inadequacies and weaknesses. Joseph says, Shalom family, Shalom Joseph, welcome and blessings, brother. Good to see you. Quote, intellectually humble people are engaged in what you think of as higher quality listening in discussions, unquote, Dr. Leary says. Even just in their facial expressions, they're more attentive. They nod at things that they agree with, even though they might disagree with certain other things. They're better listeners, unquote. Overall, they are sincerely interested in grasping what another person says so they can be better informed about their own beliefs and opinions. Common obstacles to achieve intellectual humility. Among top reasons folks may not have intellectual humility is a low tolerance for ambiguity. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I don't know what that means to y'all, but to me, it's like, the more I know, the more I know I don't know, and the more ambiguous some things get, because it's like, you think you thought and then you find out that you don't know as much as you thought and the things that you used to know or believe is not really what is not the truth. So things can get very ambiguous. So this is it. In order for us to be intellectually humble, we need to have a high tolerance for ambiguity, as opposed to being proud and arrogant and have a low tolerance for ambiguity. Many people find a sense of comfort in feeling confident or even certain in their beliefs. This appeals to a sense of decisiveness and the ability to construct the foundation for one's lived reality. Admitting you could be wrong about something could then strip confidence from your beliefs, inviting uncertainty about the way you see the world, which can be super uncomfortable for many. Onia says, what do you mean low tolerance? How low? Yeah. There you go. Let's be decisive or let's be specific and not ambiguous. It's also challenging, it says here in the article, to be intellectually humble when strongly held values are associated with your beliefs. Quote, as soon as you put values or you moralize a topic, it makes it much more difficult for people to be open-minded about it, Dr. Leary says, adding that morals are intrinsic to your identity and help you provide the framework for guiding your decisions. Such foundational beliefs are likely to be defended when challenged and pose an obstacle to be intellectually humble. How to develop intellectual humility. How to develop intellectual humility. This is it. Number one, recognize your own bias. And we have spoken about this many, many times before. We all are biased. We're all biased in one way or another, but we need to be mindful of that. And in order for us to be objective, I think that it's really important for us to acknowledge that we're biased, towards this or towards that. And so acknowledge that, and then it would help you to get a little bit more into the objective arena as opposed to being more biased and less truthful, if you put it that way. The moment you can identify that your perspective and set of principles aren't necessarily inherently right or universally held by all people, the more willing you can be at entertaining other perspectives. Number two, identify the stakes in a conversation. It can be easy to get upset and double down on your opinions when someone offends your sensibilities. But in those moments, Dr. Leary suggests taking a different approach. Ask yourself, quote, what's actionable about this conversation, unquote. Basically, will this conversation result in a real change of behavior? Also, is the fallout, no matter which way it falls, likely to impact your life in a strong way? If the answer to either or both of those questions is no, Dr. Leary encourages you to focus on listening instead of trying to win over the person. Okay. I think that's it for the... Oh, no, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, that's it for the article. All right, Hannah, if you're available to come and bless us with some music, that would be awesome. In the meantime, if those of you who just joined us in the past few minutes, if you like, please leave a like, subscribe, follow if you haven't already. That would be awesome. We do this every single day. I am focusing on getting more special guests on. If any of you know of someone that would be interested in coming on here as a special guest, send me an email, ChristopherEnoch@protonmail.com. That's ChristopherEnoch@protonmail.com. All right. So yeah, we do this every single day, 7 days a week, almost 365 days a year. I know there's been a couple days here and there we miss, but we do as much as we possibly can. So anyways, Hannah is going to bless us with some beautiful spontaneous music here, and then we'll be back to read from Flavius Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews. Here is Hannah. Thank you very much, Hannah. That was beautiful. That was beautiful as always. Thank you. Thank you for blessing us with your talent. God bless you abundantly. Okay, we are on Flavius Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, Book 8, chapter, I believe this is chapter 13. No, chapter 14. I'm behind here. This is chapter 14. This is paragraph 3. Oh, by the way, here it says, Onia says, if you like what Christopher said, like the video. If you share the same views as what Christopher said, share the video. If you commend what Christopher said, comment on the video. Actually, you don't even have to share the same views or commend. Share, even if you don't share the same views, pull in the backup, and share, get your buddies on, and doesn't matter whether you share the same views as not, as long as you're half decent about it. That's all. Paragraph 3. Now Ben-Hadad, or Ben-Hadad, when he had saved himself and as much of his army as he could out of the battle, he consulted with his friends how he might make another expedition against the Israelites. Now those friends advised him not to fight with them on the hills, because their God was potent in such places, and thence it had come to pass when they had very lately been beaten. But they said, if they joined battle with them in the plain, they should beat them. They also gave him this further advice, to send home those kings whom he had brought as his auxiliaries, but to retain their army, and had set captains over it instead of the kings, and to raise up an army out of their country, and let them be in the place of the former who perished in the battle, together with horses and chariots. So he judged their counsel to be good, and acted according to it in the management of the army. Paragraph 4. At the beginning of the spring, Ben-Hadad took his army with him and led it against the Hebrews. And when he was come to a certain city which was called Aphek, he pitched his camp in the great plain. Ahab also went to meet him with his army, and pitched his camp over against him, although his army was a very small one, if it were compared with the enemy's. But the prophet came again to him and told him that God would give him the victory, and that he might demonstrate his own power to be, not only on the mountains, but on the plains also, which it seems was contrary to the opinion of the Syrians. So they lay quiet in their camp 7 days. But on the last of those days, when their enemies came out of their camp, and put themselves in array in order to fight, Ahab also brought out his own army, and when the battle was joined, they fought valiantly. He put the enemy to flight, and pursued them, and pressed upon them, and slew them. Nay, they were destroyed by their own chariots, and by one another, nor could any more than a few of them escape to their own city Aphek, who were also killed by the walls falling upon them, being in number 27,000. Now there were slain in this battle 100,000 more, but Ben-Hadad, the king of the Syrians, fled away with certain others of his most faithful servants, and hid himself in a cellar underground. And when these told him that the kings of Israel were humane and merciful men, and that they might make use of the usual manner of supplication, and obtain deliverance from Ahab, in case he would give them leave to go to him, he gave them leave accordingly. So they came to Ahab, clothed in sackcloth, with ropes about their heads, for this was the ancient manner of supplication among the Syrians, and said that Ben-Hadad desired he would save him, and that he would ever be a servant to him for that favor. Ahab replied he was glad that he was alive and not hurt in the battle. And he further promised him the same honor and kindness that a man would show to his brother. So they received assurances upon oath from him that when he came to him, he should receive no harm from him. And then went and brought him out of the cellar wherein he was hid, and brought him to Ahab as he sat in his chariot. So Ben-Hadad worshipped him, and Ahab gave him his hand, and made him come up to him in his chariot, and kissed him, and bid him be of good cheer, and not to expect that any mischief should be done to him. So Ben-Hadad returned him thanks, and professed that he also would remember his kindness to him all the days of his life, and promised he would restore those cities of the Israelites, which the former kings had taken from them, and grant that he should have leave to come to Damascus, as his forefathers had to come to Syria. So they confirmed their covenant by oaths, and Ahab made him many presents, and sent him back to his own kingdom. And this was the conclusion of the war that Ben-Hadad made against Ahab and the Israelites. Paragraph 5. But a certain prophet, whose name was Micaiah, came to one of the Israelites and bid him smite him on the head, for by so doing he would please God. But when he would not do so, he foretold to him that since he disobeyed the commands of God, he should meet with a lion and be destroyed by him. When that sad accident had befallen the man, the prophet came again to another and gave him the same injunction. So he smote him and wounded his skull, upon which he bound up his head and came to the king, and told him that he had been a soldier of his, and had custody of one of the prisoners committed to him by an officer, and that the prisoner being run away, he was in danger of losing his own life by means of that officer, who had threatened him, that if the prisoner escaped, he would kill him. And when Ahab had said that he would justly die, he took off the binding about his head, and was known by the king to be Micaiah the prophet, who made use of this artifice as a prelude to his following words. For he said that God would punish him who had suffered Ben-Hadad, a blasphemer against him, to execute punishment, and that he would so bring it about that he should die by another's means, and his people by the other's army. Upon which Ahab was very angry at the prophet, and gave commandment that he should be put in prison, and there kept. But for himself he was in confusion at the words of Micaiah, and returned to his house. So that will conclude the reading for tonight. Tomorrow, Lord willing, we will do chapter 15 concerning Jehoshaphat, the king of Jerusalem, and how Ahab made an expedition against the Syrians and was assisted therein by Jehoshaphat, but was himself overcome in battle and perished therein. Yes, so tomorrow, Lord willing, we will read that. So, there you have it for tonight. It's an early night for once. A lot of times we go on for 4 hours, sometimes 5, 6 hours, or even longer. Anyways, thank y'all. Blessings, blessings. You guys are awesome. You guys are world changers. Keep on keeping on. Keep on pressing in. Keep on pressing in. Keep on calling on his name, as the prophet Jeremiah said, and he, that is God, will show you great and mighty, mighty things. Amen. Amen. Once more, just before you go, if you haven't, leave a like, subscribe and follow, and we'll see you again, Lord willing, tomorrow. Lord willing, tomorrow. Amen. Amen. Billy says the sun is still out. Wow. Yeah. Thanks, Christopher. God bless. Thank you very much, Billy. God bless you more. Appreciate that. Once again, if any of you know of anybody that'd be interested in coming on here as a live guest, I'm specifically looking for people who are different. Talk about critical thinking. I'm looking for people who are different than what we believe, like maybe really different, than what we believe, and having a good, nice, having a good, profitable chat with these people. Joseph says, thank you, Christopher. Have a blessed evening, family. Thank you very much, Joseph. You too. Blessings multiplied too. Joseph says, amen. Amen. Yes. All right, guys. Love you guys. I'll see you guys again tomorrow, Lord willing, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I pray the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom.